Okay, hi, welcome all. I'm going to take you through a video and show you how to use this machine, what this machine does, how you can use it, how you can make money from it, and how complex it is, and basically how you can start making money from key cutting without too much experience and without too much knowledge. Basically, it is not as hard as it seems. In this course I'm going to take you through, I'm going to show you all the ins and outs of this particular machine. Although it looks like a very confronting machine, only to be used by experts, only to be used by men, all of those things are not true. Men, women, even teenagers, children, if your children are going to use it, I would approach with caution because it can be a dangerous machine. But like any machine, once you know how to use it, you can use it and you can make money from it. This is one, and as you can see the condition of it, it's a good machine, an expensive machine, and the reason it's kind of dirty and all the rest is because I have a lot of these machines. The reason I have a lot of these machines is because they all make money. I'm in the industry of key cutting, so when it comes to key machines, yeah, each time I see one and it's affordable, I purchase it because I know every time it's being used it makes money. And that's this point of this video, that this course that we're going to be doing, is I'm going to show you how you can buy a machine, how you can start using it and making money, whether you put it on a shop counter, whether you put it in your garage, wherever you want to put it. You might live in an estate where people need keys cut. You might be a real estate agent, you might be an post office worker, anywhere like that where people might need keys in your area and nobody's cutting them. To actually get a key cut, it takes time. You've got to go, queue, line up. Will they do a good job? Won't they do a good job? What we're going to do is we're going to break it down, and we're going to break it down to what the machine costs, what the keys cost, how to use it, and how to produce a good key straight away so you can start cutting keys and making money for yourself. Easier than it seems, and if you can use a sewing machine, you can definitely use a key machine. Sewing machine, I have started using one recently, and they're a lot more complex than a key cutting machine. So let me take you through now, and I'm going to break this up into different stages so you can skip and go ahead. I do advise you watch all of them. You do need all that information. When you've got all that information, you're going to be able to perform the task a lot better. Okay, let's get started. So some of the things you're going to need if you're going to be cutting keys. First thing is you're going to need some key blanks. A file brush I recommend. It's better than using the one on the key machine. It's safer, and you can simply give it a quick wipe down to remove any blurs. Safety goggles. Safety goggles are important. The brass goes everywhere. Earmuffs. If it's making sound and it's loud to your ears, there's a chance it could be hurting your ears. So earmuffs are not a necessity, but they're recommended, especially if you've got a key machine that makes a lot of noise, in which case your cutter might be blunt. A book, a quick reference book. Inside the quick reference book, it's got all the numbers. It also tells you the conversion for that particular key. If I had a key here and it had no numbers on it, I could look through here and identify it, and also identify the profile by putting the key up to it. It'll also give me references, such as what one manufacturer calls their key is different to another manufacturer. So I could look at this and say, okay, this is an LW4, but to a different manufacturer, it's what's called a C4. By using a book like this, it'll allow me to know what I'm cutting and making sure that I can reorder and also use the correct key to do so. On saying that, I did promise that key cutting, making money from key cutting, a lot of the time it's not as complex as learning a complete book like this. A lot of the time you're only talking about knowing 20 or 30 keys, which are common in the domestic market. When it goes to automotive keys, car keys, there might be another couple of hundred. But generally speaking, there's a few that are very common, and you'll get to know them very quickly. So having some key blanks and having a key reference chart, I'll leave a link down in the description where you can download a key chart for yourself, and it's free of charge. These tools here you can pick up from the hardware store. This is only a couple of dollars. Earmuffs, $20, $30, not much at all. But these are the tools you're going to need. Okay, so the first point I want to do is to introduce the machine. This is a 240 volt machine. It operates via mains power. Here's the power at the back, you plug it in, you turn it on. On a machine like this, to activate it, there's normally another switch, and that for this machine is on the side. When you activate it, the light comes on. When I want to start cutting my key, I have a trigger down the bottom here, so I pull the carriage down, I pull that trigger, and I lift up. Okay, this particular type of machine is what's called a semi-automatic machine. What that means is it's semi-automatic because it has a handle for the feed through rate. So I can move that backwards and forwards. That's my feed rate. So that's semi-automatic. Other key machines simply don't have a handle, and you need to lift the carriage up and move it left or right via your own power of moving left or right. A fully automatic machine, you simply load the keys in and you push a button, it will engage itself, move left and right as needed and produce the key without you needing to do two-handed operation. So that's the introductory to the machine. This particular machine is one that you could be cutting, let's say maybe a couple of hundred keys per week with no problems, no questions. The actual machine itself is built of high quality, high precision, and it's designed for high use. You can buy cheaper key machines and they can come in a lot cheaper than this. Because this is the introductory, we're going to say this key machine probably about $4,000. Other key machines you can get to achieve what you want to achieve of key cutting on a lower scale, you can get for about $1,000. Anything less than that, you're probably going to get something that's not as much quality. This particular quality here has the high cutter, the buffing wheel, the semi-automatic, tools underneath, LED light, ergonomic design, so when you pull down you can engage, trigger adjustments, all these type of things. What I'm going to be showing you in this course is basically how to produce a key. You can use these same set of rules and apply them to just about any key machine for single and double-sided keys. To start off with, let's look at a single-sided key. This right here is a single-sided key. It has grooves on one side. A double-sided key can be something like a car key or a small key, which would have grooves on both sides. That is what this machine is designed to do, is to cut single and double-sided keys. Okay, before we go any further, I think the best thing we could do is start off with the safety on this particular type of machine. So to start off with, whenever you're cutting keys, it's well worth having safety goggles. You've got that little blue sticker there for a reason. Safety goggles. When the key is being cut and the material is being removed from the key, it's going to go everywhere. You can see the sharp filings up and around the back, and also some collected in the swarf tray below. Not always does the swarf end up in the swarf tray. When you're using this particular type of machine or any key machine, you're going to find bits of brass or bits of steel in splintery formation, which is this type of small stuff here, going everywhere. So safety goggles are a must whenever using a key machine. If you're cutting a large volume of keys, I would suggest earmuffs as well. Earmuffs are good basically just to reduce the noise of the key machine. If you've got a blunt cutter, which is this one here, on your key machine's actually going to produce a higher pitch noise. Over time this can damage your hearing. A lot of the time people don't use earmuffs if they're just cutting one key here or there and they've got a sharp cutter. But if you hear an ear-piercing sound and it is loud to your ears, wear safety earmuffs because they don't hurt and they will protect your hearing to some degree. The next point we have to make is about the cutter. Never feed or operate the machine when you've got your hand in this position. A lot of key machines, they have a full left position or a full right position, and in this case here, if I was to pull the lever down all the way, it would go all the way to the left. This gives me room to start loading my original key and my blank key and keeping me as far away from that cutter as possible. With some machines you can flick a switch and it will turn on. Some machines you've actually got to pull and release to turn them on. But you need to have that machine in the safest position possible so it won't turn on. The most safest position, if you're new at key cutting, is to have the power off. Guaranteed not to turn on. So if I bump this or something happens and I'm loading a key, nothing's going to happen. So that is the safest position to have it. If you're new to key cutting, start there. Turn it off. If you're more experienced with key cutting, such as I am, I can load it without too much trouble and without too much danger. Even if my machine is turned on, I know that unless this carriage is lifted, it's not going to switch on. So I could quite easily load my carriage now and keep my hands in a safe position. So even if that was to go, I know that I'm off to the side. On your tracer side, you've got no troubles because there's no sharp key blade there. So safety is a must. This particular blade right here cuts metal, brass, and some other alloys. Basically, it's a metal cutter. It'll remove a finger quicker than you can blink. You need to treat it with respect, and if you treat it with respect, knowing that that cutter can cut a finger off, you will be a lot safer if you have that respect. If you have any doubts or you're worried about this cutter taking a finger off or anything silly like that, start from the beginning. Turn the power off. Bang. It's safe. It's safe to load now. Anytime your hand or anything as dangerous was in this thing, there's no way this machine can get power without you turning it back on. So safety is a must. The next thing you might want to do with this particular machine is buffer key. Now this particular machine has a buffer on this side here, if we can just put it around here. This is a buffer. So once again, you need to push a button on this side which will engage the cutter and the buffer. Watch. That means that I now have to get in this vicinity of the cutter. For professionals, that's not a big deal, but for some other people who are new to key cutting, I would suggest not using the buffer. They're expensive, they're close to the cutter, the cutting wheel is spinning. I would suggest just using a hand brush or a metal wire brush and giving it a wipe down rather than putting the key in your hand in such a close position. So we've gone over those things there. If you ever need to change a fuse, once again, power must be off on any machine, and power is basically your friend when you come to something with a blade. If you're not sure, disconnect the power and then you can be 100% sure before you move on. Okay, let's get to know the machine. I'm going to tell you what all the parts are and what they're called. Okay, so to start off with, I'm just going to turn the power off here. We have our cutter, which is right here. Now this is a metal cutter. Okay, this is not a cheaper cutter, this is more expensive. The more you pay for a cutter, the better the quality, the longer it's going to last. Power switch at the back, and for this particular machine, to turn the machine on, the switch is on the side. Different key machines vary from where their power switch is, but it's still a power switch and the effect remains constant. On the side here we have what's known as a buffing brush. This is used to remove the swarf or the excess burrs from the key. I suggest using a different method. I don't like this particular method, but that is what it is there for. We now move over to the guide over here. Now this is our guide. This is where the original key sits. This is on this side. This has an adjustment with an Allen key. You won't need to adjust this like every week. You will probably adjust it once every 2 years, and I'll show you how to know when to adjust it later on in the video. This is simply just a little knob you turn. This post goes in, it goes out, allowing this point here and this point here to be accurate. This is nothing more than a sketch-a-doodle where you're tracing or copying exactly what is on this side. These jaws and the spacing are representing these right here. So as long as our two keys are set, we're going to get the same result. Looking here, this is what we call a jaw. Now, this jaw here has 4 sides. Some only have 2. You release it, you rotate it round. The reason you would do this is to allow you to get a good grip on your key. These jaws, and I'll take one off to quickly show you, have different grooves inside the jaw. And those different grooves allow you to hold different keys different ways. I'll just quickly remove it here. Okay, so looking at it in this way. So this one's just a straight edge, flipping it around. This one has a groove on the bottom. Flipping it around, this one's a little bit shorter, and then this one will probably have a groove on the top. This particular key machine is good quality, and it's not a cheap one, so these jaws have little spring-loaded parts and springs in there. They squeeze together when you clamp them. Underneath the jaws here you can see some swarf. This is what I mean about wearing safety goggles. This swarf goes everywhere, and you need these jaws to be accurate and precise, so cleaning on any key machine is a must. Putting them back in the corresponding way, we're on jaw A, so we lift it up, we rotate it round. And when you tighten, you just tighten it down finger tight. So these are our jaws. Shoulder guide. This is this little bar that pops up at the front here. This allows us to line the keys up to a particular point. A lot of keys line up from this point, this shoulder right here. So when we lift up this piece of metal here, it allows us to gauge up these two keys to the exact same point. And I'll show you more about gauging a key a little bit later on. Okay, now down the bottom we have the swarf tray, and I'll just move it down just a little bit there. If you can see, the swarf should be collected here. Sometimes it's not, so you can quickly just brush that down and that should funnel down to the bottom. A lot of key machines don't have this function and brass goes everywhere. Doesn't really matter. With a paintbrush and a dustpan you can clean up very quickly. This particular machine is quite a good one because it has a drawer down the bottom. I can show you here, and here's where some of the accessories are actually kept. So we've got our piece of wire, our tip stops, tools used for changing the cutter and the blade, and a few other little Allen keys down the back used for adjusting as well. A lot of machines have what's called a motor run button. This allows this buffing wheel on this side here to actually activate, as well as the cutter. So you've got to be aware that the cutter will be moving when you activate this button. I'm going to activate it now. This allows me to go through with my key, push it, and buff if need be. Okay, the other things you might want to know is here's your this is jaws, this whole block of material here, cradles, shoulder stop, and we have our semi-automatic arm. We could call it a feed, a guide, different people call it different names. Up here we have an LED. If you do buy a machine with an LED light, it does help actually illuminate what you're actually cutting. So that's not a bad feature as well. Alright, so that's basically identifying most of the parts on a key machine that you're going to need to know. The key machine here is a 240 volt machine. They do come in 12 volt, and it's basically 12 volt or mains power, one or the other. Okay, let's get into key loading. This is a very critical stage in any key copying. If you don't load the keys properly, it's not going to cut properly. As I said before, this is like a sketch-a-doodle machine where you load in the original on one side and it duplicates on the other side. The way it does that is that this jaw and this cutter, this guide and this cutter, this jaw and this jaw, they're all spaced and accurately measured, very tight tolerances. What that means is whatever is here will be copied over here because it's the exact same distance. If you don't load your machine properly, you're not going to get those type of results. To load a key machine, it's quite simple. You've got nothing in your jaws. You can start off by just putting in the original on the left hand side, or the side that has the guide. The blank key goes on the side that has the cutter. So we put it in here and we give it a little nip up, not tight, not super tight, just enough so that the key won't move in and out or won't move from its position. We then bring the shoulder guide up and we align it with our first, with our customs key or original key. We then back off this side, putting a finger on top to keep this key flat, and we move it forwards until the shoulder hits the shoulder guide. Then we tighten it up just a little bit past a nip so that it's actually firm. The key won't roll, the key won't move, and that will be consistent in both sides. That is how you load a single-sided key. This principle only works when the key is in the exact position where the shoulder guide aligns, and this key here must be at the bottom, sitting on the bottom of the key blade in the jaw. So what you do is you put it in, you can move it left, you can move it right, but you make sure that that key is all the way riding on the bottom of the key inside the key jaw. If it's not, or if it goes in crooked, you're not going to get a good key. As long as you put that in, you can slide it backwards and forwards like that. You know then that key is at the base on that key blade. So then the only thing to do is just to line up the shoulder. Right now I've actually got my blank key more forward than my original key, and I can actually just back off my original key, slide it forward until my shoulder touches, tighten it up. Very important to drop your shoulder guide, you don't want to cut into that, and then I can start cutting. Bang. Okay, let's get down to business now. Now, we have our key machine. Cleanliness is always important. Grab your brush, wipe it down, keep all your swarf out of the way, keep your jaws tidy. Let's start cutting keys, let's start making money. Okay, so we've got given our set of keys from our customer. Here we are. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to line up my key blank. Once I'm happy and I've found my correct key blank, I simply need to load the customer's key in the left-hand side for this particular machine and rotate to the right jaw. Right jaw for a single-sided key is jaw A, and that is because this key, as we said before, is butted up against this bottom ledge right here and held in position. So I put that on jaw A, slide it backwards and forwards and make sure it's all the way down the bottom of the jaw and there is no burrs or no debris in that jaw, and then I'm getting it 100% on the bottom of the jaw. I loosen this duplicate jaw off, rotate it around to the corresponding jaw, which is jaw A, which it'll be on 90% of the time anyway. I put my key blade in there, slide it backwards and forwards, make sure it's level, not on an angle, but level. And once I'm happy, I just very lightly tighten it down so it now no longer moves. Bring up my shoulder guide, I line up my original key with the shoulder, I then loosen off my duplicate key, slide it backwards and forwards until the base of the key is securely in the jaw, but I'm also corresponding with the shoulder guide here. So both of these keys now are touching that shoulder guide. Okay, first things first, safety goggles. Let's put them on. Okay, now to cut this key in this particular machine, I need to turn the motor on. Other machines I might have a switch on top, but it's all the same principle. You pull the jaw down, I pull the trigger, and as I move past a certain point, it's going to engage the motor. Now, with particular type of key machines, there's two types of cutters you can have. There's two types of cutters. One that can go left and right, or one that you can only start off at the left and continue all the way to the right. With this one here, I can tell I can go left and right because it's a V formation on the cutter. If it was a simple, straight edge with an angle on one side, what that would mean is I would have to start off here, enter the key, move it all the way to the left, and then bring my carriage down and then cut again. So basically the cutters which have a V formation right here can go backwards and forwards. If they've only got if they've got a straight edge on one side, you can only go in the one direction, and that would be to start cutting and then go all the way through and then bring it back and then go back into the cut. So I'm going to simulate cutting with a one directional cutter now, and I'm going to lift up, I'm going to go into the meat of the key, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to take off about half of it, and then I'm going to come back and I'm going to go deeper and then take the other half off. There's no use lifting it up and plunging straight in there and taking all the meat off. I'm going to take it off bit by bit, and then we're going to go over our grooves. With each key, they all have little valleys here, as you can see. So what we're going to do, and I'm going to simulate it just with this brush here, is we're going to go from here, we're going to start, we're going to work our way all the way across and just take that top bit of meat off. Then on our second pass, we're going to let it go all the way down and take the rest of the meat off. Once we're happy, we're going to come over it a third time, go right in that groove, and basically go over it a few times to make sure that we achieve those heights. Okay. Once that's done, we can take our key out, and our key will be ready to go. So let's do that. Put the key back in. Now I'm going to simulate if I didn't have a jaw which is in a V formation, proper V. I'll only go the one direction. I'm going to simulate that first, and then I'll cut it again, showing you what this particular cutter can do because of its angle. So, as you can see, the key, I have not got those grooves on that key yet. I've only taken off the first pass. Now, when it comes to pushing into the key, you don't need to push into the key with a lot of machines. They're actually spring-loaded. This one's spring-loaded. So as I push up, this carriage will actually push it in as much as it needs to be. You're basically just holding the carriage. That is why it's a more expensive machine. That's why it's a semi-automatic machine. If you get one that doesn't have the semi-automatic feature, it's no big deal. That means that when you lift up, you need to push into the key, not heavy, just very lightly. You push into the key very lightly until you remove all the meat, and you can't hear it cutting no more. Let's hear what the difference between cutting and not cutting sounds like. This is not cutting. Okay, this is cutting. Big difference in the sound. So you can tell when all that meat has been removed, you'll hear that sound which is a lot lighter and just the motor, as we're compared where there's still meat on the key and it's still actually taking meat away from the key. So now that I've started on this key and I've done the first pass, let's go back and let's finish it off. Start at the left on this machine and bring it through. All the way down to the end, bring it back across, start at the shoulder and bring it over again. Now, if that was a standard cutter that I could only go one direction, that's what it would be. Now, because this machine has more of a V cutter, I can go backwards a little bit. So let me show you that. I go in, I can move my jaws backwards, forwards, so I can really get into those valleys, make sure that meat's off, listening by sound, and it's done. So it doesn't matter how many more times I run over this, I'm not going to get more sound out of this machine because the meat has been taken off. That's it. That key is cut. Now, you don't want to push too hard, and even if I was to try and push hard, I'm not getting any sound. You're really just holding it there firm. There's no need to put upwards pressure that much into the key. Enough to have it where you're going to get the guide right into the valley, but other than that, not that much at all. So that's cutting a single-sided key. Very straightforward, very easy. Let's cut a double-sided key. Okay, double-sided keys. The keys that everybody worries about, or the car keys, small house keys. The keys that always seem to be a problem for a lot of people. I've seen a lot of people with key machines, and when it comes to a double-sided key, they're like, oh no, too hard. And the truth is, it's not much harder. It's all very easy to do. First thing we need to do now is establish how this key is going to be held. Now, this particular key here has grooves on it. I look at this side here, and this groove up here is quite high. And what we want to cut is above that groove. So when I look at the base of the key on the other side, that groove is quite low. So for me, I want to hold it in that bottom groove, allowing more of the meat to be exposed to the cutter, allowing me to get right down to the bottom of where all the grooves need to be. Okay, so what I need to do now is actually select the right jaw. At the moment I've got jaw A, which is basically for single-sided keys, which actually holds the key using the bottom right here, and that's how it references. I'm going to go to jaw D, and I'm going to put my key in there and I'm going to feel it and see if it's got a groove or not, and it doesn't. So I'm going to move over to jaw C. Now with jaw C, I can put it in there and I can feel that I've got a V section on this jaw which is going to actually hold in this bottom groove. The reason I want that bottom groove is because on this side the bottom groove is closer to me, on this side the bottom groove is further away from me. Now if I hold on that bottom groove, I can allow enough of that key blank to be exposed to the cutter. If I hold on that top groove, I'm not going to have enough meat on the top of the key to be exposed. So it's quite simple and you'll get quite used to it very quickly. I put the key in there, and the same principle of moving the key backwards and forwards as I tighten the jaw. And once I get it in the right spot, it should not be able to slide backwards or forwards, and if I give it a slight twist there, it's not going to roll off. So that's just lightly twisted and tightened. The next point here to notice is that with single-sided keys, we generally reference them from this corner right here, this shoulder guide. With this particular key, we're lucky it has a shoulder right here as well. We can use the same technique we used before using our shoulder guide reference. So we can just flick that up and we can insert our customer's key, making sure that we've got the exact same jaw on the other side, which is C. So it says C here and it says C here. The jaws are marked. We put that key in, once again sliding it backwards and forwards, making sure we've got that key in that exact groove. I lift up my shoulder guide. Now I'm touching here, but I'm not touching here. So what I can do is I can just loosen this off, push it forward just a little bit, tighten that up. Not too tight, just nipped up. And that one's tight, that one's tight. You can hear it. Hear that? That's tight enough. Now we can start to cut. So that's an automotive key. Now let's look at one that's a little bit more tricky, which has no shoulder on it at all. So let's go for a Toyota key, for example. Let's pull one off the board right here. Now this is a Toyota car key shell, and it has no shoulder here. So how would we do that? First thing we do is we work out where the actual groove is that we're going to be using to hold it. And as I flip it over, it's the same scenario as before. It's got a groove right along the back. So I would be very happy with jaw C. I put it in there, I move it backwards and forwards, and I'm holding it securely. It's good. Now on a machine like this, it has all these slots in the jaws right here. And this particular machine comes with a special little tool. You don't need this special little tool, and I'll show you how to do that in a moment. But to use this special little tool, all you need to do is back your key off, slide it backwards, put this tool, okay, which just slides in there like so, put this tool in there, hold it in position, release your jaw and slide your key forward. My key is now lined up using this tip right here, using this slot right here, using this tool. So if I was to put this tool back in there, it would only just slide in just enough. So this is my point of reference for this type of key because it has no shoulder guide. Then I can load the customer's key on this side and start cutting. Okay, just one more thing I forgot to say there, just a bit of a pro tip. If you don't have grooves in your key machine jaws like this, and you want to line up a tip stop, or the key is sitting too far backwards when you line it up using the slot, what you can do is you can release it. You can use a flat piece of metal and push it all the way forward, okay, and just tighten it up. You can use the edge of the jaw as a tip stop. See how I've done that? That's exactly right, but I must do the same on the other side. A bit of a pro tip there. Okay, cutting a double-sided key. Now this is one of the more complicated keys you're probably going to be producing, and they're not even complicated. I see a lot of people in hardware stores and they say, oh, car key, oh no, terrible, terrible. It's not that terrible. All the same rules apply. So with this key now, we just need to identify which groove we're going to be holding it on, and we did speak about that before. The groove furthest away from me now is on the top in this particular scenario. So I'm going to rotate it to where my jaws have that groove in a V section to hold it in that V. So I believe, where are we? D, I believe D is the right one. So I'm just going to try and load it in that and see if it holds in there nicely. D, no. C is on the bottom. I'm just going to rotate it around. Sorry, my mistake, it is D. D has it on the top, so we're going to line it up there. This particular key does not have a shoulder guide, so we cannot line it up by the shoulder. So I've just basically put those in there quickly for now. I'm going to be using a tool or a flat bit of metal, and I'm going to use the edge of the jaw to line it up. I could be using these slots, but I like to just do it this way. So I'm going to push it forward, all the way forward, pushing my bit of metal there, and then tightening it up. Notice how I've got one finger here keeping it flat in that V section, and I've got one finger here, and then I just quickly hit it with my thumb to a point where it won't move, then I nip it up. I'm going to do the same on this side here. Make sure it's in that D section. We've got the exact same jaw, line it up the exact same way. Now with a key like this, it's important to give them a little bit of a move. See, it's not going to move. If it does, we're going to get a miscut. Now our keys are matching on both sides, so let's go through and duplicate it. So I'm going to start from the left again, and I'm going to work my way all the way over to the right. And with this key machine, as I said before, I can go left and right. It's designed to go from left to right, but you can go right just a little bit because of the shape of the cutter. It's a V section like this. If it was straight and a V angle towards the right, I'd only go one direction. So I'm just lifting it up. I can hear it's barely cutting. Now it's cutting. Now the cuts are only very small on this, so I don't have to do it in two passes. I just did it in one. And that's it. If I find that I my machine does not allow me to get all the way to the end, which is exactly what happened, I didn't get all the way to the end, I can simply realign this now. I'm going to take this key, I'm going to move it back a fraction, I'm going to use the groove in the vise, move it forwards, making sure it's all in the vise, tight and sturdy, and I'm going to go over it one more time to make sure that we achieve the full cut across the key. See how it's not cutting anything? That's because it's already been cut. It'll only be right about now that you'll start to hear a bit more. No, we heard nothing, so I'm happy with that cut. I'm now going to release the jaw, rotate it around 180, and I'm going to line it up the identical, exact same way, using my tip stop with my finger here, loosening my jaw, pushing my key forward, and tightening. So you just nip it up first to make sure it won't move, then you give it a little bit of a tighten. Don't over tighten, it's only just enough to hold this in the vise. Can you hear that? Very tight, tight enough. Let's do it again. So I'm going to simulate this type of cutter where I can move left and right. Designed for primarily left, but watch, I can now go into those valleys, backwards forwards over those valleys, to make sure we get all those meat in those valleys. Those valleys are the height of what the locks work with. They're important to get exact. Now I've turned it off and I've flicked it all the way to the left. Reason being is because I want to be as far away from that cutter as possible. The old trick of putting one key over the other works quite well, and I'm very happy with them. Okay, the other option is you can get out your vernier calipers. Zero them down, measure those valleys, those grooves, 551 on our duplicate, 546 on the original. That is close enough. If I wanted to get even more precise, what I could do is I could back this off and give this a slight adjustment and move it in or out need be. Let me show you how to check if your machine's actually going to cut a good key now. Okay, so a lot of people, they get recalls, oh, your key didn't work, this didn't work, that didn't work. Let me show you a couple of pro tips now. One of the most standard keys you're going to use is this common Lockwood key here. Very, very common. Okay, we normally hold this where it's held down the bottom. If you get a customer come back and they say, oh, my key didn't work, perhaps it's something to do with their lock and the way their lock operates. So instead of holding it down the bottom groove right here, we can use a jaw and hold it in this next groove up. This will allow the key, when it goes into the lock, to recenter on the point that it's centering. Most locks center on the base, but very rarely you'll get one that'll actually use this groove to actually line itself up. So if you find you're getting keys come back and they're not right, first thing to do is actually check with vernier calipers. These things here, check your grooves, see what size they are. Now if they're extremely close, you're fine. Like right, I'll show you what close is. 8.82. Okay, if we were about 8.81 or 8.93 or 4, that is close enough. That's extremely close. 0.8 mil, so that's not a tenth. I think it's like a tenth of a mil, 20th of a mil, basically 20/30th of a mil, which is not much at all. So if I wanted to recut this key because the customer came back, I'm going to hold it in this middle groove now. I'm going to flick over to jaw D, I believe it is, and that will allow me to hold the key now into that jaw. And once again, I will go through and line up with my shoulder. That's one little option you can do. Now, if your machine's well out of calibration, it's some old machine you picked up from a garage sale years ago, good way to check if your machine's good enough is to put in 2 key blanks. Put in 2 key blanks just like this, line them up just as you would a normal duplicate. Okay, drop it and do a cut. And what we're listening for is we want it to be the machine noise with no meat being taken off the key. Let's have a listen. I can hear only a slightest of fraction. That's taking a little bit of meat off. Okay, now I can check my key and I can see that the blade has taken off about half of the paint off this particular key. So I know that that is spot on, that's close enough. If it was cutting the full width of the key, I would say no, this machine needs adjustment. If I really want to get precise, which some people do, you get vernier calipers over the top here, and I can see 8.76. Now I check in the section which I have cut, 8.8. Shouldn't be bigger. Let's check it. Zero them back in again. 8.70. Okay. Checking the same spot. 8.71. So 0.01 is the difference between these two keys. So I'm saying that's an extremely calibrated machine. I wouldn't need to touch that for probably 6 months, 4 months, depending on the amount of volume of keys you cut. You know, at least 500 keys from now, easy. So don't start adjusting machine if it does need to be adjusted. Check it. If you're getting recalls on keys and they're not cutting right, check it in those two ways, and that will allow you to be able to know where you're roughly at and whether or not you need to do any adjusting. Okay, so just in conclusion, the video is about teaching you how to make money from a key cutting machine, and I believe we've gone through all of that. Some of the steps you might find a little bit confronting or a little bit too informational, a little bit technical. Take them all on board. Definitely take note of the safety procedures. It's not as technical as you think, and a lot of things with practice come a lot easier. Key identification will come a lot easier. Being able to move the jaws and listen for that sound becomes a lot easier. Being able to line up the keys becomes a lot easier. Once you do it 20-30 times, you become almost an expert at it. You will make your mistakes. A few of the mistakes I don't want you to make is to be silly or complacent with the machine because it does have a cutter, and you need to just be aware and respect it for that it can definitely hurt you if you go with your fingers anywhere near this cutter. Okay, so if you've got any doubts, turn the machine off. One of the other things is to be aware of is that all these sharp little metal filings, you see my hands, I've had them for years. I'm a tradie, and this is what tradies' hands look like. Sometimes you do get little splinters. Get a pair of tweezers, pull them out. A lot of the time they're brass, so it's undesirable. Unlikely if you follow all the techniques of keeping the machine clean and following good safety procedures, unlikely that you're going to get anything more than a splinter, and that would be the worst case scenario. So by using the machine properly, if you get a splinter every now and again, that's just part and parcel of using such a machine. And if you keep it clean like this, you're probably not even going to get that. There's no reason why anybody can't use this machine. You don't need to be a male, a female, young, old. Anybody can use it. Absolutely anybody can use it. Just like any other power tool or work tool out there. Now, this type of machine, it makes money. And I'm in the industry of cutting keys, been doing it a long time. A machine like this, this is probably about a $4,000 investment. Then you have your key lengths, which range from anywhere to $1 to $2 and upwards of some of the more fancier ones like this. They're the ones where the money's actually at, because instead of doing a standard duplicate where you just duplicate a key and you charge them, for example, $5 or $10, when you cut a colored key you can generally charge them $15, $18. The prices are around there, so you're going to make more money if you're going to cut a fancy key. One of the more fancy keys we have here is this 21st key, where a lot of the time they get it engraved as well. So something like that, you're going to be talking in the $30 range, and the procedure of cutting it is identical. It's all the same. You're just cutting that meat off that actual key. So cutting keys can be very profitable. On an average, if you were to basically not look at the cost of the machine and you were to look at the actual cost of the key lengths, you're turning $2 into probably $10. You're making an $8 profit. And if you compare that to most other machines out there, paint mixing machines, milkshake making machines, key cutting machines, bang for buck, size and weight and room up they take, they're definitely a good investment and a money maker. If you're in a location where it's hard to get another key cut, people are going to need to pay your price, and if your price is $10 or $12, that's quite reasonable. Some hardware shops cut them at $2 to $3, but the thing about it is they don't have the skills which I've just given you. The skills that I've just given you right now would allow them to make plenty more money, but they look at the key machine as, well, we have to do it, not that we want to do it. And generally speaking, I don't think their training program I don't think they're really interested in it. It's something they've got to do, not want to do, and they're not making money for themselves, so they generally cut a lot of bad keys. They just slap them in there and then send it out to the customer, and they end up with bad keys. If you take your time, follow the steps, you'll be able to produce a nice cut key and make a profit from your keys without people bringing keys back. Don't be upset if somebody does bring one of your keys back. It will happen from time to time. You will make that mistake of not lining it up, not keeping your machine clean, or not having a calibrated machine. They're the top three. Other times you might get a key from a lock which is imported from China that doesn't work the exact same way as some of the other locks. That's when that technique of being able to hold it in that groove will give you that second option. Key cutting is profitable. It is easy to do, and you shouldn't have too many problems doing it. I'll leave a link down in the description where you can get that book so you can cross-reference. I'll leave a link down in the description where you can get key machines under $1,000, key machines to get you started. You can start on a package for about $1,200 to $1,300 and start cutting keys straight away. And when you look at your investment of $1,200, if you cut 100 keys at $12 a key, you're basically paid off. Everything after that is profit. So if you cut another 100 keys the next year, you're $1,200 up. Some people cut 100 keys a day, and if you look at their ratios, you know, on a machine like this, which could be 20 years old, it might have made who knows how much depending on your volume, but you really can make a lot of good money. A lot of people try to use espresso machines in the front of their shops and things, and I look at key cutting and I'd say I'd prefer to use a key cutting machine than an espresso machine. Espresso machine you might be making $2-3 a cup, $4-5, who knows, but with keys everybody has them in their pocket, everybody uses them. They're not as much of a consumable as coffee, I agree, but the thing is a key will last you 10-15 years, and it's something that's just as easy to use. An espresso machine you've got a lot more problems with, a lot more quality control. You know, that's something that you're consuming. You know, if my key is green or blue, it doesn't matter, it's still going to work. If my key's been sitting on the shelf for 5 years and you come into the shop and want another key, my key will not go out of date. With other consumables of food and coffee and things, they do go out of date, and that's something why that's one of the reasons I have so many key machines, because this can sit here for 10 to 15 years, and one day I might put it in just a little shop there or some country town, and somebody will walk in and say, can I have a key? And once again, bang bang bang, it'll work. You know, it might be a little bit more faded, might have a little bit of surface rust, but it's going to do exactly what it needs to do. So a good key machine is an investment. Cutting keys is not that hard, and it is something that just about anybody can do. During this last pandemic, well, still going on, I actually took up sewing, and learning to use a sewing machine was harder than using a key cutting machine. The key cutting machine didn't take me long to pick up at all many years back. A sewing machine took me at least a week just to be able to do the type of stitch that I was wanting to do. And I tell you now, it was a lot more frustrating, a lot more intricate parts than just using this. So when I walk into those sewing places now, I have a vast more respect, because I know how hard it is to use one of those machines. But when you see ladies using them all day, every day, and all the rest, you think, oh, sewing's easy. Well, that was my thought, but it was a lot harder than expected. And I think a lot of people look at key machines the same way. They think, oh no, they're harder than this and harder than that. So I hope this course has been enlightening for you. Leave your comments down below, and if you've got any questions or anything like that we can help you out with, we can always do another video and show you how to do a particular type of key or a different key machine, and hopefully you'll be able to put a key machine in the front of your shop or in your garage or wherever it is you might want one, and be able to start cutting keys. Thanks for watching.